The mics are on. Do you know what? That's the third time I'm trying to do this. I actually wrote a checklist down for myself before this episode. So I keep forgetting to put the mics on.
That's what you do. That's a pilot
and I haven't
thing.
bothered with a checklist.
Go through the checklist.
Exactly. Right. Okay. If you listen to this in your podcast app, okay, there is a episode before this, which is the icebreaker. If you haven't listened to that, go back and listen to that with Tom. I asked Tom a bunch of questions submitted by the H-Hour subscribers. And it was an entertaining episode, a good lead in to the full podcast. I suggest you go back and watch that one or listen to that one. If not, you can just clean F me off. I was going to say flip me off. Yeah, flip me off. And just listen to this one straight through. Okay, we've got more questions coming into the live stream chat for you, which I'll circle around to at the end of the podcast.
Cool.
However, one of the questions on the icebreaker was unexpected near-death experiences. You described one.
I did,
which was a hair-raising one.
It was.
Which amazingly you'd forgotten about.
I'd totally forgotten about it. And then I was like, oh yeah, that was quite sporty.
But in the coffee break just now, you remembered another one.
I did.
You're going to talk through that one?
I can talk you through that one. Yeah. So picture the scene. So again, Afghanistan, I want to say 2011, I think. And yeah, talking about the unexpected, there was obviously quite a bit that are more expected. I say when you're in a tick or whatever, they did love to hoy a few RPGs, they're a bit small arms, but that was kind of fairly standard. But
tick meaning for those uninitiated, troops in contact.
I know, TLAs all over it, 3-letter acronyms. I would try not to do too many because you slip back into it. Slip back into it. And I think, yeah, it was a convoy. So there was a convoy crawling through, I can't remember where, near one of the bigger FOBs, forward operating base, little base, actually quite a big base. And I think they'd come across, they'd been hit by an IED, I believe. So they'd called us in for a bit of top cover because obviously sometimes that would lead on to being taken on by ground troops, etc. And so we weren't really expecting much because usually once you, in that kind of environment, once you're in the overhead, generally in that kind of scenario, that it would go quite quiet because Taliban knew who we were, what we could do. But in this base was a GMLRS, which is a ground-based missile launching system. Saw some artillery person be like, that's not what it is at all, but essentially fires
grid
missile
launch rocket system.
Yeah.
Missile. Anyway, go on.
Yeah.
It was MLRS and it was GMLRS.
I think GMLRS was the grid. So it went from, was it grid squared to meter squared was the little tagline they used, I believe. That's quite cheese, isn't it? But the guy controlling that, so you have different radios going and ROS, which is called, so essentially they go, this bit of airspace, do not go in this because you can have missiles coming through it and that's not going to be good for if that hits your helicopter, it's not going to be good for you. So he's kind of said, well, where are you? And so I'd given him the grid of a convoy. And I think in his head, he was like, well, we're just sat in a hover over top this convoy.
What year was this?
I think 2011, I think.
Okay.
But don't quote me on that. My memory is not amazing. But I think so. I think they didn't have it 2009. Anyway, they...
GMLRS? They did have it then.
Did they? It could have been them then. It could be either.
They had GMLRS in 2008.
Ah, there you go. So it could have been either. But so he kind of thought we were sat bolt over the top of this convoy, but we don't. We kind of go around what's called a wheel. So you're flying in a big circle because it's easy for the aircraft to perform, and it means you can bring your weapons to bear quicker. So we're going around this big circle, and so he'd obviously gone, oh, he's fine, he's out of the way, he's not, so he's not going to get nothing. And then something happened, so they were like, right, launching GMLRS, but they didn't tell us. So we were just going over the top of this base, and the GMLRS launches, and that was proper panic changing because you basically see this thing the size of a telegraph pole smashing through it and filling the whole window. And again, I'll probably use some choice.
Well, you're right above it.
Yeah, pretty well. It felt like we were. I'm sure actually in reality there was a few hundred meters maybe, but it felt like, that's
Did it not trigger any systems in the Apache? Yeah.
No, because it's very smart, the Apache. And I mean, we're now on a new model. We're now on the E model, but I was flying the D model back then. And it was the missile warning system is proper epic. So it can essentially from the muzzle, well, not even the muzzle flash, the rotor flash. So it can determine what kind of SAM it is, surface to air missile, and deploy appropriate countermeasures. But obviously a GMLRS is not in its catalogue of stuff to get worried about. So I can't remember if it did deploy flares and all the rest of it. But it was that moment where you're like, no, this is fine. This is quite relaxed. And I literally was like, we're getting shot down. And we're like, what the hell have they got? They've got some massive Russian tech that no one knew about. And they were like, oh yeah, that was the GMLRS. I was like, mate, like you nearly smashed us out of the sky. But yeah, so that was a bit of from absolutely fine to like, yeah, we're going to die. And then not really knowing what happened. And thinking, nah, this is it. They've got some doomsday weapon and they're going to take us on. But yeah, sadly not. It's just a bit of friendly fire. We all love a bit of that.
A bit of friendly fire. Yeah, helis have always fascinated me since, from a military perspective, since reading Chicken Hawk back in the day.
It's classic.
What a book that was. Oh my God.
Yeah, it's
and
amazing.
Then later on, when I was serving with 3 Para, there was a bunch of guys. I think there was one from 3 Para, and there was at least 4 from 2 Para. All of a sudden, it was after the 2006 Herrick tour, that one in Helmand, and 2 Para were maybe it was after the 08 tour. Anyway, it was one of them, and there was a flurry of guys wanting to go and become Apache pilots, and I think there was 5 in total were successful over about a 2-year period, which was quite high from one unit.
Oh yeah, I know them. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
I won't open reveal them on here because I don't know what,
okay, interesting.
Chat offline, yeah. But yeah, because their feelings are on it. But
and then I was and then actually before you arrived to this venue today, I was talking to someone here, and he was asking had I ever jumped out of a plane and all that usual stuff, and then he got onto the subject of helicopters. So he'd never flown in helicopters and how petrified to be of helicopters because if something goes wrong.
Yeah.
If something goes wrong,
it's not great.
You can't just glide it in most of the time that you kind of plane, you know?
I mean, if you want to get technical and nerdy.
The Apache's had a bit of glide capability, did it not?
Well, all helicopters do. So you can do something called auto rotation. So essentially, you've got your blades spinning around on top. So if you lose the engine, disc as we call it. So if you lose power, now Apache had 2 engines, most, apart from the Gazelle, was a single engine. Most have 2. But for example, if you lost both engines, you can drop down a collective, which is the lever on your left-hand side that puts the pitch on the blade. So pull it up, goes up, push it down, goes down. It's the general thing. But you've obviously got no power going to those blades. So then you basically turn yourself into a giant sycamore seed. So you're using the weight of the helicopter to keep the rotors going.
Oh.
So you can go down. So then you do it regularly. It's like something you practice. And then basically when you get about, depending on the helicopter, like 10 feet off the ground, you pull all the power in, which then pitches all the blades so it kind of bites the air and hopefully do a nice little cushioned landing. Problem being, whatever's in front of you, that's where you're going. Like you've got like a kind of cone in front of you of where you can go. Because if you don't get all the pitch off the collective, the blades will just stop turning and you fall out of the sky like a rock. So you have got options, but they're not great options. I think it's fair to say. So yeah, all helicopters can do that. But yeah, it's sporty. It's not something you want to have to do in anger.
Do you remember when the bootnecks did that rescue across the water where they jumped on the wings of the Apache?
Yes.
Went across?
Yeah, Juggling Fort. Yeah.
So is that actually a protocol that was known before that and trained before that?
No, absolutely not.
That was just out of.
And I know the guys who did it, but I'm not a subject matter expert. But from what I gather, it was a total unknown. So there was that had never been tried. So it was just this is what we're going to do. And I think they were laughed out of the room initially. People being like, what, I'm going to go and strap to the side of an Apache. But it hadn't been trialed. It was just so the idea was being, if you had your wingman goes down, you can land on and they'll literally just, because it's got big old welded handholds on the side, but it had never been done in anger. So the idea was you could land on next to your muckers, get them to clamber on and then go. So again, it was not something that had been trialed. It was very much a kind of boys' own, like, right, this is adventurous stuff, guys. It was mad looking back. Like, yeah.
As I recall, I read somewhere that they'd secured themselves on in case they lost their handhold. They'd secured themselves on with rifle slings. As I recall.
Think it was something to that. Yeah,
which makes sense when you've got nothing else. And you're like,
yeah. I mean, I think
they went going down.
Yeah, they kind of were like, it was very much that it's in the manual, and they were like, no, okay, well maybe we go slower. Yeah, it was that kind of. I think they're like, oh, maybe we'll keep it under like 70, 80 knots, which is still like 100 miles an hour. It's like sat on top of a transit van at 100 miles an hour, just like holding on to it, being like, this should be fine.
And you got the downwash, right?
Yeah. And it's freaking noisy because when they landed on, obviously the dust out there is mad. So kicked up a load of dust, and the Marines, I think, initially went the wrong way because, again, totally disorientated. You're just landing in this massive dust cloud. So one of the pilots got out and chased after them. Was like, no, you're going the wrong way. It's that way. So at one point, you had these aircraft just sat on the ground, like massive fat target. And, like, but it was one of those kind of examples of that the British military is amazing in terms of we didn't really have the resources to deal with that situation, but thinking around outside the box and having some massive balls, to be perfectly honest, but everyone involved, went out and did the job. And, sadly, obviously, it was Matthew Ford, I think, wasn't it? The guy who was missing. And he was obviously was KIA, but the fact they could recover his body and bring him back, I mean, it was a credit to everyone involved in that, to be honest. And I always thought that was a massive difference because we did a lot of work with the US Marines, and the top guys and girls, and they did some amazing stuff. But they're very much this is what we do, this is the protocol. And I still remember doing a big insertion, and so it was two Apaches, I think 3 Chinooks, and about 3 CH-53s, the massive Jolly Green Giants. And literally like 45 minutes before launch, the Chinook engineers are running around trying to get this aircraft online because it wasn't serviceable. And I remember looking over to the Marines and I was like, why have they got like 5 CH-53s, like burning and turning, as we say? So engines on, rotors going, crews in there. And speaking to US Marine guy, he's like, well, if one goes unserviceable, we got 2 to replace it. And I was like, so you've literally got crews sat there. Literally, if one just goes, oh, we've got an issue, we can't go, they're like, it's fine, we'll take the next one. Troops out into that one. It's just the resources are just so, whereas with us, it's always like, if we just do this, take a part of this and do that. And
yeah, but it's a hindrance. Having all those resources is a hindrance. I think it's, and I think that's why they are so different to us,
Yeah,
and why bigger militaries are so different to smaller militaries, because
it was,
as in, when I say different, I mean less capable on the granular individual level.
Yeah, I think it's just a very different mindset. And I think with them, like I remember I think on that same op, and we'd gone and inserted, I think it was probably about a company, can't remember where, and we'd stayed in the overhead and they were receiving kind of intermittent sniper fire, and we've been trying to find this guy, but again, it's a big town, it's if he knows his job, it's going to be very hard to find from an Apache. But we knew roughly where he was. We're like, we've kind of triangulated roughly from where they were taking the fire. And we're like, I'm pretty sure he's in this area. And then it came to the getting the guys out again. And again, the plan was we'll all come in from the north. We'll land in this formation, da-da-da-da. And I was like, no, you don't want to come in from the north. He's definitely in the northern side of the town. And if you come in, he's definitely going to get a clear shot on you guys. And the Chinook guys were like, yeah, the RAF guys were like, yeah, fine. And he's like, right, go this. And the lead US Marine guy was not happy at all. He's like, no. The plan is we come in this. And yeah, CH-53s are not as maneuverable as Chinooks. They're big old beasts. But I was kind of like, look, can you see the Chinooks in front of you? He's like, yeah. He's like, are you happy? Like, formate on them, follow their lead. And Chinook lead was like, yeah, follow me, kind of thing. Follow me. So they went around and extracted from a different part. And the Marine guy was senior to me, and he came to find me, and I was like, oh fuck, I'm in the shit now. And he kind of shook my hand. Was like, it was an amazing like tactical assessment and blah blah blah. And I was like, well, to me it was just common sense, because I was like, well, if you come in from this way, you're going to take fire, and if you come in from this way, you probably won't. But that kind of, they're very much, those are the orders, and credit to them, they would quite happily come in under fire and just go, well, that's what we're here to do. But like you say, it's a very different. We're kind of like, well, we can do stuff because we haven't got as many resources, and our ability to think on our feet, I think sometimes is.
Thing is, well, that what you're describing there is actually probably counter to what most people who haven't worked with them would have an opinion about how American forces operate, because it's like the Hollywood, just it's gotta get it done, man. It's gonna just go full smoke, bags of smoke, bags of bombs. Get in there and just get it cleared. Just do it. Do however it needs to be done. Which I think isn't the case by and large. However, I do remember getting told I wasn't on this mission, but I was out there at the time, and I'm getting told about a contact going down in 06. I think it was 06. Might be 08 actually. Anyway, and long story short, it's 3-para. A company of 3-para guys in an engagement with the Taliban, and there was 2. I can't remember the name of the helicopters. I think they called them Little Birds. No, not Little Birds. No. There were 2 like small helicopters.
Is it the Pedros? So they're like Black Hawks.
These are small like gunships.
Well, it could have been little. I don't know if they had Little Birds out there. Did they have Kiowas?
I'm sure anyway,
the other one there was a Cobras.
These 2 things are in the air, like transiting by. Realized there was a tick going on, and they landed. They landed with the rear, wherever the HQ element was, and just been pilot guy go, "Hey man, you guys need any help?" Like, no, we're fine. We're fine. Crack on, just landed to see you on the hand, which is the stereotypical way you think of gung ho Americans. I didn't work with them very much. The only significant time I spent working with the Americans, to my recollection, was in 08, and we had a handful. No, our company was on the ground. The company I was attached to, my snipers were attached to. They were on the ground doing some. I can't remember what the mission was. Nearby, there was a US company doing a mission. It was the mission was linked somehow. The 2 objectives were linked somehow, and we had a couple of their JTACs with us, or with the company on the ground. And the reason I remember it is because, our call sign indicators, the prefix for 3-para at the time was Emerald. The prefix for 2-para, I think when they went out on that tour, was Cobalt, I think it was. You have these like, what's the word?
Very generic.
Politically correct generic terms to give an indicator of what calls, what unit the call sign's from. And the company of US Marines, their call sign indicator was Terminator.
Nice.
I thought, yes, totally living up to my expectations. Not gonna fuck Terminator 1-3. Yeah, so good.
No,
so good.
I'd say the ones that I was always really impressed with, the US guys, was the Pedros. So for those not aware, so they are US Air Force, and they were kind of formed in Vietnam era to get downed air crew from behind enemy lines, and they fly. I think I want to call it a Pave Hawk. It's a variant of the Black Hawk, but this thing is like geared up, 50 cals on it. It is a serious bit of kit, and the guys in the back are parajumpers. So they all look like Dolph Lundgren. They're all absolutely massive, and they have like jaws of life. They have all this gear in the back, and I still remember there was an engagement. I think it was down near Sangin, and British fought, and it was quite an isolated base fob. And they'd taken a casualty, and they were fighting back towards the fob. So we kind of turn up on station. And again, we're providing cover and fire for them to try and extract back. And I think it was their officer who'd been hit, and I think sadly didn't make it, but he was obviously in a bad way. And the Pedros were called to casevac him. And so getting out there, for those not aware listening, they have compounds, which, like big walls. I mean, I say like 9-10 feet high. They're pretty big. And usually have a kind of big courtyard, etc. in the middle. And so these guys were like, right, get the grid, send him the grid, and say, this is where they're getting back to. And he was like, okay, can I land outside? And I said, well, it hasn't been cleared, so we don't know what's there. Could be fine, could not. And he's like, what about in the compound? And I was like, I mean, yeah, because that's where the friendlies are. But I'm looking out the window going, you're not going to fit in there, mate. You're not going to fit. And he's like, yeah, I can get in there. And again, like the aerodynamics of helicopters, you've got disc, which is the rotors, which are spinning at thousands of revolutions per minute. If they hit anything, that's it, game over. Everyone dies. Like the helicopter rips itself apart. Like anyone in the vicinity is getting filled with shrapnel essentially that's been launched out. So if you mess this up, like the crew are probably going to get at anyone else in the vicinity. And I remember just thinking, I was like, mate, are you sure this is not a great idea? So But this guy came screaming in while his wingman was kind of providing cover low. I mean, they're all about 50 feet tooling around with the 50 cows going. And I just think, I was like, please don't screw this up, because it's gonna be a real shit day for everyone. But I just remember seeing it, literally came in, boop, like just popped it down in the middle of this compound. I was like, mate, that is insane. Because I kind of said, this guy's in a bad way. We need to get him back like now. And yeah, we were kind of riding cover and fire. I went and found the pilot afterwards, and I was like, it was a very Top Gun moment. I was like, mate, it's like the ballsiest thing I've ever seen. And he was like, but it didn't matter that it was a British soldier. He was just like, hey, job needed to be done. And like, he's like, I'm just glad. And he was, and he was gushing me, mate, you guys were there, like putting the 30 mil down, like providing us fire. And, he said, no, it just meant I could concentrate, because I knew you guys, I could hear your guns going, and you knew that you had the enemy kind of tied up. And it was amazing. And I said, if I ever see Pedro Pilot, I'll always buy him a beer, because and they regularly did stuff like with the vehicles getting hit, they would land on next to it, and like the parajumpers jump out the back with jaws of life, like cutting guys out of the jackals and stuff. Like they were amazing guys. So I've always got, and they were they were pretty free and loose how they got to operate, etc. So they were kind of not totally wild, but they were very much like, we'll do what we need to do. That's how we operate. Like, we're trained to go miles behind enemy lines. So I always had a lot of time and respect for those boys.
I was in Kandahar and got shown to their, it was Pedro. It was basically a med helicopter, equivalent of a MERT.
Yeah.
But smaller, obviously. And the crew showed us around that and basically the capabilities of it, because we were between missions. And I was, same thing. I was, well, not from the flying ability, because I'd never seen it, but in the back they were talking through what they were able to do surgically basically paramedics, right? But surgically in the back, what they were able to do and when they were able to do it. And he was talking to me about the procedures they could undertake at night in the back of that helicopter with goggles on, NVGs.
Yeah.
Like, I struggle to do anything. I say struggle. It's not easy to do anything in
NVGs,
it isn't.
Right? Yeah.
Let alone conduct some life-saving procedure on someone in the back of a helicopter, which you've got no doors.
Yeah.
A lot of the time. And it's pitch black and it's flying. And then you're in the back probably with some scalpel, some tubes, some...
Yeah.
Just unbelievable capability.
I say, the Chinook MERT as well. Again, it's like pretty much an operating theatre in the back of a Chinook.
Yeah.
And, the amount of people that they saved is insane. Like, when you think about if that injury happened to you on the M1, you're pretty much done for. And like, but the amount of people that the Chinook MERT went in and got out and managed to get back and are now, still with us, it was just amazing, because you kind of think, this is not a kind of sedate, perimeter around the HLS. It's just like they're come steaming in right next to the casualty, and obviously usually pretty hot. So yeah, there was some amazing things achieved, I think, with the MERT guys and Pedros. So yeah, always hats off to them. Always happy to buy them a beer.
There's a guy I interviewed. We were talking off air earlier about different types of tours. We were mentioning Liz McConaughey, and then we remember a guy called Tom Martinson, who I interviewed a while about, a RAF Reg guy, and he's one of the first guys I interviewed. And it's why I love speaking to people like you, all these people from different military backgrounds. I think so when we leave, I think a lot of the time we have this opinion where, especially if you've done some tasty stuff, you have this opinion where what you've done is like completely unique, and it's so much more than everyone else. Sometimes I definitely had a thought that, I think in the back of my mind, like what I'd done was like much more than most other people, and unique in that, in its impact on me and the kind of near-death experiences and stuff like that. Yeah. And what I've come to learn now is that's not the case. I think it's just we've all done different things, but lots and lots and lots of people from the 2000 to the 2015 period did some crazy shit. And Tom Martinson, I remember him coming home, we were talking, and he's got acute. He's a filmmaker now. He's an amazing filmmaker. He's coming back on soon, actually. But he's got like acute complex PTSD, and it's from a specific period when he was out there. And people think, "Oh, RAF Reg, what are they doing?" They always get a slagging. Yeah. Tom Martin, they obviously do stuff, right? RAF Reg, obviously, and they're part of SFSG, But Tom Martinson spent almost an entire tour. I think it was maybe 4 months doing a job which was meant to be, I think it's a week rotation or 2 weeks. You're supposed to only do 2 weeks on it, then you go off and you do something else. And that job was MERT. And Tom Artisan for months was on the MERT team, so in the back of the heli, providing protection for the helis going in when they were on the ground, rescuing the casualties and all that. You know, and when a MERT call goes out, that is, you're going to somebody's worst day of their life, or multiple people's worst day of life. He did it for months, and so you always have that. What's that comparison between like air troops and ground troops? And there's definitely a difference, and definitely some of us are tougher than the others, right? But not always. So I have the utmost respect, mate, for what you did, and it can't have been easy. Do you know Chris Vosper?
I do.
Hey, I meant to ask you that earlier. I think Chris is the first Apache pilot I interviewed, actually.
Yeah.
Maybe been the only one so far. Now you're the second, yeah.
The Chris. Duke, yes.
The Duke. I think his missus told me that nickname, actually, and I've forgotten all about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's quite a character.
Yeah. So did you serve with him?
Yeah. I know him well. I haven't seen him for a while, but yeah, we were like same era.
Oh yeah. Okay. Yeah. Good guy. He's a good guy. What did you think about I got to ask you. What did you think about the US Air Force heli crash into the commercial plane? What was that, about 2 months ago?
Yeah. It's very hard to say because I think I had a lot of people, asking the same thing. They're like, you used to fly helicopters in the military, like you must know. And I was like, with an air investigation, there is so much going on. And it's not, I personally don't think it's fair to go, well, I think this is what happened, because I don't know. And actually, in fact, even people involved in it don't know yet. So, and obviously...
Oh, it's still going on?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, it's still, they haven't conclusively said what the outcome was. I could have a guess at what might have happened, but the fact that it's very easy to pile onto the military crew and say, well, they weren't looking and they were on gogs. And it's, again, flying on goggles at night is disorientating. It's not easy. And it's easy, but I do not know what happened yet. So I know that's a bit of a cop-out, but it's like, people have died essentially in this. So until there's official air investigation and says this is what the cause of the crash was, I don't think it's fair or respectful to those to go, well, it was clearly these guys' fault. And ultimately, airspace is busy, and especially around Washington, like it's super busy. There's obviously all kinds of VIPs flying around, low-level military. And I think there's always this thing they talk about of the big space. They go, well, air is big. There's lots of space. Like, how could you fly into each other? And again, I've had loads of close calls, especially out in theatre in Afghan, because, at one point, I think it was one of the busiest airports in the world, Camp Bastion, with just especially helicopter-wise, a lot of traffic. And you're all low level. You're all like strobes off. You don't have what's called a transponder, which essentially tells everyone where you are, because you don't really want the bad guys to know where you are. So, a lot of it is coordinating, and stuff gets missed. Like, where you put your lights on, where you put your lights off. And again, different nations have different SOPs, don't always talk to each other. So it's really easy just to go, well, it was these guys being, gash or being whatever. I honestly don't know. I'll be really intrigued to see what the outcome of the investigation is. Cause,
I mean, I think along with most people, you go, what? How in the fuck does that happen? But the only, like, in my head, I don't, again, I'm like, I don't want to go down the route of, let's try and identify what the blame was, because ultimately we don't know. But I mean, to me, it seems like human error. Obviously, there's always an element that involved anyway, right? It has to be. But you got experience with goggles on. I've got experience with goggles on. It's like extensive experience, the pair of us. I know, right? So I picture in my mind being a helicopter pilot on goggles, right? Over that airport, over a city. And I think, oh my God, the amount of lights and moving lights.
Yeah.
And that's all you can see, right? Because the actual light sources, street lights, airplane lights, airstrip lights, car lights, all of that stuff. They basically occupy your vision, and it plays real havoc with things like perception of depth and all the rest of it. And in my mind, I can just think, okay, it may well have been super difficult to identify by the lights, just by the lights, anything in front of you, because of how chaotic it can be. I remember myself making a mistake. I mean, it didn't cost lives. In Afghan, and I was on goggles. It was early on the tour. I remember looking to the rear, and I was rear protection, looking to the rear of this little patrol we had going out, and I thought there was a vehicle approaching the camp at high speed because of the lights I could see. But in hindsight, it wasn't, and we didn't open up or like that. But I had a panic moment for a few seconds, going, "Holy shit!"
Yeah.
You know, to the point where I nearly got on the net to go, "We got a problem here, guys." And I looked back, and it wasn't the actual. It was a vehicle which was much further than where I thought.
Yeah.
But it was a really big vehicle, so the lights were further apart. It looked closer. I thought it was a close car. It was a truck at a distance, and that was in a calm environment. I wasn't flying a goddamn helicopter.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You know what I mean? And it wasn't like completely saturated with street lights and all the rest of it. So it's
well, because we operate on the Apache. It's infrared, so it's called FLIR, forward-looking infrared. So you've got your little monocle over your right eye, and the camera itself is sat on the nose. So if you're flying it in the back, it's about 10 feet in front of you, 4 feet below you, and it kind of turns wherever you move your helmet to give you that. But there's a little bit of lag, and it's not perfect. And especially when we did the early tours, we had like the old system, which it's like 80s tech. It's like playing an Atari. So you're kind of like, I can't really make anything out. And then we got MTADs later, which was much better. But yeah, we had a similar thing going back into Bastion, and obviously your lights out when you're flying around out there because putting your strobes on is not a bright idea. And going back to Bastion, because it's in the middle of the desert, it's a massive heat source. So infrared's just looking at heat. So all you can see is this massive blob of like all this stuff. And the guy I was flying with, I was like, "Can you see something?" And he's like, "What?" And I was like, "I'm sure I can see something." And he's like, "What are you talking about?" And there were 2 US Black Hawks were coming the other way, and we just didn't see them because they were blended in, and we had our lights off and they were on gogs and they just didn't see us. And we pretty much flew between them, like going the opposite way, because we kind of turned on our SOP was we turn our strobes on at like 5 miles. Theirs was they turn us off, whatever it was. And we just, like that. And then we were just, but it's like, it's that no one was doing anything wrong. No one was acting, irresponsible or whatever. It was just the way it happened on that day. So yeah, it's always complex. Like there's always, human error of sorts, but no one's ever setting out to kind of do it in that way. And they say we're operating at night using infrared and goggles. It's hard. It's really disorientating.
Well, how come you end up leaving? Why didn't you stay in?
For me, I think a big part of it was on that second tour, and yeah, we did an engagement, and it was all kind of pretty well done. If I'm gonna, so we got a call out, and again, and usually it was at night, and they'd.
When you say call out, you make it sound like you're a plumber.
I know, it's funny. You got a call out, got a shout, got a call out. Can you come and sort this? But, yeah. So yeah, we got a shout at like quite late at night, and it was 2 guys digging an IED in. So it was pretty clear cut, like 2 guys in the middle of the night digging in the middle of the road. It's like they're not doing roadworks, they're not doing plumbing. So yeah, we kind of observed it, and we're like, yeah, this is handover from JTAC, Joint Tactical Air Controller, so the guy on the ground who was talking us onto the target, and you do all these kind of checks to check it's the right target, and et cetera, and we're like, yeah, this is good, cleared to engage, 2 KIA, 2 killed in action, return to base, good job, guys. And I've kind of done it all, and then as we were heading back to camp, I was like, oh, what time is it? And he's like, oh, I think it's whatever it was. And I was like, oh, but put your foot down so we can get back to the aircrew feeder. The US had a feeder thing that was open till late. And I just caught my thought process, and I was like, we talk about neutralizing and KIAs and all that. And I was like, these were not nice people. They were setting out and they were going to kill, British troops, Afghan civilians, whatever. They weren't. But you've just gone and killed 2 human beings. And my heart rate had not gone up. Like, compare it to my first engagement, you literally feel like I'm going to have a heart attack because sweat dripping down your hands, heart coming out your chest, and you're like, fucking hell. But I just got so used to it. And, that is part of the coping mechanism, I guess, because you are busy and you're doing a job. You're protecting the people on the ground, but I did not like the mindset of just being like, yeah, it's just another day. And your mind's already like, right, what can we get back and get some food because I'm hungry? And yeah, that didn't sit particularly well with me. I was like, that's not something I want to get used to. I don't want to, that's not the person I think I am or I want to be. And it was also getting to that point in my life where I was kind of getting a bit older, getting towards kind of late 20s, and other stuff starts being more of a priority in life. So I think, yeah, between that and I just feel like it was the right time for me. And, you know, I joined to be an Apache pilot, and I'd gone and flown in combat under like stressful kind of situations. So I didn't feel like I needed to kind of keep going so I can have my moment, to have my thing to say, yeah, I went and did the job. I was like, well, I've kind of gone and done it, and I don't want it to turn me into someone I don't want to be. And yeah, it's stuff that I've kind of thought about after the effect, and you know, we all kind of deal with our PTSD or whatever you want to label it, however you want to do that. But I feel at that moment it was quite a key emotional moment for me, that going, yeah, I feel like this is not something I'm particularly happy with in terms of how easy it got for me. How it's just like, yeah, it's a job, which obviously it is, and that's how you cope in that environment. Like everyone has their ways of coping with that level of stress and that level of what you're doing. But yeah, it kind of had quite a big effect on me.
I don't think I describe it as a coping mechanism. I think it's normal in that it's a result of repetition. And what I mean by that is, I think it's the same as, you know, you do something difficult or do anything once the first time, and you process it and you find it difficult and you go, that was painful, and you do your review and you get ready for the next time, and the next time's a little still hard but not as hard. And if you do stuff enough, from weightlifting to going to the sauna to running to going on patrol, you know, for the umpteenth time that day or that week, you know, you're going to get shot at and not even thinking about it and going out and doing it. I think it's just a result of repetition. But what is unusual is that impact of repetition can have the same effect on those non-life-threatening things to things like you're describing. You would like to think that sort of morally within us, and like just the fact that the human element of us would not let that repetition impact creep in like it does for everything else. And again, which is normal. You'd like to think that you've always got humanity in the back of your mind, but I just don't think it's the case. You look at firefighters, you know, police officers, anything like that, where they're doing these things day in, day out, completely normalized. Special forces, completely normalized, you know. What is different about people is how you choose to process that later on, or when you realize that you did or not. And I think that is the thing that comes back to haunt people. I think people who have the normalization of it, that repetition, you know, and yes, it's completely normal, but then take it a stage further and sort of and actually think about it, and then they're really blasé with it. Well, it's fuck it. This is it. They deserve it. This is what it is, and that may be the case, you know. But I don't think you're being true to yourself when you're trying to assess actually what you're taking part in.
Yeah, and I think also in that environment, I'm sure it's the same for you. It's very macho. It's very like, we're going to do this, and we're all alphas, and we don't feel bad about stuff because that's who we are.
But that's required, right?
Yeah, I mean, again, we had some female pilots, but they were very much in the minority, and it was a bit. You do need that. You need that. What do you call it? Killer instinct, aggression, because you know you're flying an attack helicopter. Like your job is to engage the enemy. Your job is to protect the troops on the ground. So you do, and that was kind of cultivated, that like mindset of being like, you know, this is what you're here to do. You're not, you know. So yeah, you kind of need that edge. You need that element, and again, that's why they like recruiting people young, because you just go, yeah, I'm aggressive, I'm risk taking, I'm going to do that and put myself in harm's way, because that's how you think. You don't think anything bad's ever going to happen to you. It's always going to be some other person. So yeah, and I think that the issue then can be that it's, you know, you can't be seen to be weak in front of everyone, or it's deemed as being weak by, you know, coming out and saying, actually, I don't feel great about this, or I'm having real issues with whatever it is. I think it's been really good in the last few years of having kind of the celebrities of the ex-mil world kind of coming forward, and guys like Foxy or whatever, and saying, yeah, I really struggle with this. And if someone like that, who's the kind of big alpha dude who's gone and done stuff, and properly, you can't say he hasn't gone and done some gnarly stuff, to say, yeah, it's okay, it's normal. Like, I think that's really good and really refreshing, I think, for
I think a good thing of that, a good part of that as well is that not only is it helping people who are suffering to like be aware of it, address it, be a bit more forthcoming with who they tell and how they seek help. But I think also it's forcing the hand of the military to pay more attention to preventing those kinds of injuries and illnesses, because you can absolutely reduce the impact. I think you can maintain the operational tempo and that kind of operational tempo we were part of, and those kind of roles in the military you have to have, from Apache pilot to special forces operator. I think you can still have those, but you can put protocols in place to reduce the likelihood of mental ill health or severe mental ill health, basically. I think I know you can.
No, I agree. I think there's still ways you can do it. And I think, as you say, like the whole kind of decompression, going through Cyprus and being like, oh, you got 24 hours and you can have some warm beers and listen to like, some rubbish comedian, and then go and speak to the padre if you want. And of course, no one goes to speak to the padre. And I was like, is he a trained counsellor? Is he, it's that kind of, yeah, you'll be fine, boys, off you go.
We didn't even have the comedian. So I did the first one I say the first one, the first batch of them in 06. I did the last one off the first tour. I was stuck in Musacala. We got out after everyone else, and they put this one on. And it was literally locked in the camp. I can't remember what the name of the camp was. Locked into the camp, and it was just crazy beer. Crazy beer cider, barbecue on, music on, and that was it. It was it was lit. Oh, and there was a load of provost staff, like not even police. The rules people, the guards, the disciplinarians of the battalion were there, but it was let them get pissed, let them let off steam, let anything happens, and it just turned into a mass. It just turned into a fucking brawl. I mean, we were there with it was three, like, I don't know, like 10 3-power lads, and the rest were Royal Irish. It just turned into a mass brawl. But they just
who could have predicted? Who could have predicted?
And then the next morning, we were on the beach recovering. On the beach, like recovering from our hangovers.
Yeah.
But I think maybe we had a talk from the padre. But I mean, what a joke that was in the early days. The recompression, I called it. Did not help whatsoever. I remember the Royal Irish went back, and when they went back to their unit, and I think this is brilliant. Although they were complaining about it at the time and we were ripping them for it, they went back, and I'm sure their CO made them go. They weren't allowed to go home for a week, and they went hill walking, I think, for a week. So it's like not allowed home. Bearing in mind, they just come out of Musacala, stuck there for 2 months.
Yeah,
they were stuck there a bit longer, and came back. You're going hill walking for a week, and at the time they all grumbled. But looking back, I think that is genius.
Yeah,
genius.
Yeah.
You come back, proper settle in now. It's not a piss up.
Yeah.
You're going to just relax. You're back in the UK, just trying to calm the mind before you go home. And I say a genius. I think it was a really good idea. But even that, it doesn't work for all people.
No.
And not all people need it.
Yeah.
A lot of people just go straight, oh yeah, well, I'm fine. It's like completely unimpacted by these things.
Yeah.
It's one of the things that's amazed me over the years is that how you can have two people go and experience exactly the same thing. It could be some horrendous event, exactly the same thing, and one is absolutely fine, and the other one's absolutely fucked.
Yeah.
Or you can have a bunch of people experience some menial thing. They go out on patrol, maybe they get shot at, maybe an ID goes off, but no one's injured. It's like a near miss, and most people are fine, and there's a handful, or maybe one or two are absolutely fucked from it.
Yeah.
Absolutely fucked from it.
And also, it's when that comes out, because as you say, it might be like, a couple of years and it's all fine. And then 5, 10, 15 years later, just suddenly something triggers you or whatever it is. And, I think it's not just, you've come back, you've checked. Yeah, we checked when you're fine. And then, these things have a way of sometimes, like you say, it's going through the same experience. But then I was always fascinated, like, because whenever we did an engagement, it's all recorded. So our gun tape, as it was called. So anytime you fire, you've got to record it, and you'd always go back. You have to debrief it. So you'd have the squadron boss in there. You have some kind of legal representative checking all the rules of engagement, etc. Which it's a big pressure, because when you're firing, the screen is like a small Kindle-sized screen. It's not big. And then it's put up on a massive widescreen, and then they'll debrief it, being like, right, what about this guy here? Do you see him? You're like, nope. Like, because you're under pressure. You've got guys on the radio. It's all happening. But even with that, you'd be like 2 aircraft on the same engagement, and they had a totally different. They were like, no, that wasn't how it went. And you're like, no, I was there, mate. He's like, yes, so was I. But you're literally in the same airspace, looking at the same thing, and you both interpret it totally differently. So I think exactly the same thing. However you are in a patrol or whatever, you see it differently to someone, or you remember it differently, and the sensations and the stress you feel. So, like you say, there's no kind of, this is it, this will help solve it. Once you do this, you'll be fine. So yeah, I think it's just that the military could definitely do better with helping people, whatever that is, or however they do it, but just acknowledging that this could be a thing, and not just kind of going, yeah, you guys are fine. We did our bit. We did, got to talk to the padre, have a few beers. You're fine now.
Yeah. Wash the hands a bit.
Yeah.
Wash the hands, yeah. It's a problem. I mean, on that like perspective and perception thing, I interviewed a Met Police firearms officer late last year, a guy called Tony Long, of relative notoriety within the Met, and a regular on your talk shows and news segments and stuff when there's anything to do with a shooting with the police. He over his career, I think 25 years he served with the Met Police, he killed 3 people, shot 3 people. Now it's unusual to kill 1. He killed 3.
Yeah.
And the third one, he ended up, the first 2 was cleared up pretty quick. And the third one, he ended up, going to court in front of a jury on murder charges and got cleared of it. But when we were talking about it there, he was talking about very similar to what you were saying there, that after action, all this footage they've got, and it was on his one, that one he was talking about, there was vehicle, there's vehicles involved, and they had eyewitness from the rear vehicle, the eyewitness from, I think, some other vehicle, the eyewitness from his vehicle, then they had his testimony. And when it was being reviewed in the court, it could be interpreted in so many different ways. When in actual fact, when he talks through the account, when he's the glue that like makes all make sense. Whereas if you look at just from the rear car, it seems like he's gone and murdered someone in cold blood.
Yeah.
When you look at it from the other car and the other testimony, and with the way he describes the additional perspective, which no one else could see, or very few could see, and it all made sense, but he could quite easily have been, convicted for that. If he had been allowed to present his evidence in a certain way, or he had a shit lawyer, it's difficult. One of the problems with technology, there's a lot to be said, right, for being able to record everything, body cams and cameras in the aircraft and cameras on balloons and cameras, whatever. A lot to be said for it, but my God, it does play havoc sometimes. The body worn cameras on police officers, I'm not sure about that. Not sure about that at all. Helmet cams with military, we were talking about off air. Helmet cams with military, not sure about that.
And like you say, is that the build up, and especially with our engagements, and the pattern of life was a massive thing. I know people find that weird because obviously you guys on the ground, it's much more, you can hear it, you can smell it, you're there in it, and you kind of, if it all goes quiet, it's not, that's that kind of hairs going up on the back of your neck going, whoa, this isn't.
Do you have the same experience in the helis then? Could you get a picture like that?
Yes, but not the same, if that makes sense. So there'd be certain things like anyone striding, which sounds daft.
Anyone what?
Striding, like walking with a purpose.
Right.
Because people didn't walk like that. Everyone would just kind of, because it's super hot, everyone would just kind of amble along, very relaxed. But if you see someone like walking with a purpose, you're like, where are you going? Like what? And that, that on its own is obviously not, but it would just, you kind of go.
Especially if there's troops in the area.
Yeah. You'd be like, why are they walking around here? Or are people just kind of hanging around certain areas, and you think, okay, well, that's out in the sun. Like, why aren't you sat in the shade? Or like, there's all these little things, or carrying a big bag or something, and you think, again, it's really hot. It's the middle of the day. Why are you lugging around this massive bag? And yeah, one of the guys I flew with had a similar, and he was like, I just knew this guy. Everything was saying he is doing something, but they didn't have anything solid. So he followed him for about half an hour, and he had this kind of big, it was like almost like a carpet, like under his arm, and you're like, he's wandering around with a carpet in the middle of the day. Like, it's just, it's just odd behavior. It's like, it's weird. And And then sure enough, he kind of gets to some point, and then he reaches down, pulls out a bipod from the carpet, puts it down. He's like, yeah, long barrel weapon, and carpet comes off, clear to engage. But again, it took that. He was the experienced operator, and he's just like, this. I just knew. He's like, this guy's doing something. The way he's walking, the way he's carrying around this massive object, that you think that's not a normal thing to do. So I don't think it's the same as being troops on the ground where, you can hear stuff, or like the dogs start barking, or that kind of all the little atmospherics that you can feel, or that weird sixth sense where you're like, this doesn't feel right. This feels. So it wasn't quite as extreme as that, but you learned to watch how people were behaving. And that, again, that just takes time, because you've got to spend that time watching what's normal and what's not. So yeah, I think it's to a lesser extent, but that's how we had to kind of work hard to get those, because the early days it was more open combat, I guess, in terms of guys putting down direct rounds on troops, and then but it's not massively effective when you've got a 42 million pound helicopter gunship. It's not going to work out well for the Taliban guys. So as the tours progressed, they got smarter and smarter, and it became harder and harder to identify who these people were and kind of prosecute them. So yeah, there was a lot of that, having to really work at that stuff and the atmospherics and working out that pattern of life.
You just said work out who they are, and it got harder to prosecute them. Is prosecute the politically correct term
Shoot
for
them.
shooting?
Yeah,
prosecute them.
Prosecute. But that's the thing. You fall into that language, because you're kind of like, no, we're just neutralizing the target, and it's like, no, you're killing them. Like,
we're all blasé now. You say slide.
Yeah, and it is.
Them.
Yeah, it is that thing of being like, but then when you were kind of, because you do these debriefs and they'd be kind of quite formal, like you'd be sat there, and especially if you had we had ones and we had kind of some bigger high value targets, and you'd have like some big generals sat in the back, because this person we've been after for however long. So yeah, you had to be quite like, at this point we identified target, whatever their call sign was, da-di-da-di-da. So yeah, it's quite different to Tom's on the ground, just like, yeah, just slotted him. Like, and again, it was more casual, I suppose, outside that, but you just got used to that formality of that. And, even when you were operating the Apache, I can't remember the mouth music, but you'd literally be like, like weapons armed, guns hot, like, all these kind of things that you had to go through to make sure you were doing it properly. Because yeah, you've got massive amount of firepower on that aircraft. And if you pull the wrong trigger, because so you had two triggers on the front thing. One was laser and one was to launch the Hellfires or the gun. So, and I will say there are people who have pulled the wrong trigger and launched a Hellfire off the rail when they meant to use the laser.
Was it not a safety?
There is, but you're arming the aircraft. So you arm the aircraft. I can't remember the exact pattern. Someone will tear me apart online and say, you got it wrong. But essentially, you've got to arm the aircraft, because there is a big kind of safety butch, like, right, the aircraft is armed. So you can use the laser without that. But there was, I think, again, it was something because you have a foot pedal that you used to do to the radio. And I think that was, I want to say the left. Yeah, whatever it was, whichever pedal was the same
left
one.
Is, and left is the clutch, mate.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember. I should remember this. Maybe it's the right pedal. I haven't done it for a long time, but they essentially did a kind of muscle memory, pulled it at the same time, and Hellfire went off the rails.
Oh my God.
And it just launched into the middle of nowhere. But luckily they were in the middle of nowhere, so it just went off into the sky, wherever. Because it just goes straight up unless it sees a laser, it won't follow, it'll just launch up.
Oh my God.
But yeah, it's that thing of being like, it's easily done. Like, and yeah, you go through that. That's the reason you've got your checks and the rigorous. That's why you're supposed to do it in a certain way. And like, normally you don't arm the aircraft till like the last minute and then go, right, cleared to engage, safety off, like firing or whatever. So yeah, it's quite rigorous in that way for that reason, because you don't want to go hoying rounds around. But
what do pilots like yourself think of drone pilots?
Ooh.
Are they pilots?
Most pilots will say no, but like, nah, you're not a pilot. So I know guys not particularly well who have gone and done it. I'd say you're an operator.
So the actual pilots who then became drone pilots?
Yeah. Not many, to be fair. And I only know of this guy who did it. But yeah, I think I'd say you're an operator, not a pilot, in my humble opinion. So you're operating an aircraft, but for me, a pilot, you've got to be sat in it. You've got to have some skin in the game. Like that's that element for me. And I know you can argue it to and fro, and there's no doubting it's like a big part, especially now, all this stuff in Ukraine. It's a massive part of the battlefield. I personally wouldn't say that's the true nature of being a pilot. Like, you're piloting aircraft, you're in that aircraft, you're flying it, whatever way that is. Yeah, and there was always like quite a bit of ribbing went on, and there's all lots of good stuff on YouTube taking the piss out of drone pilots, all the rest of it. And for me, it's very bizarre, like the fact these guys were sat in Las Vegas in an ISO container, watching a feed, and then like of some live engagement, potentially engaging a target, killing a bunch of people, and then going home to the wife and kids.
Wild, isn't it?
I personally couldn't do that. Like, when I was in Afghanistan, I was like, you have a mindset, you're like that, you're there to do that, and that's all that kind of encompasses everything. Ultimately, that's all your world is at that time. But the thought of doing that and then just going home, like,
there's a level of disassociation there, I think, which comes naturally with that, which I think most of those people, I mean, I am completely hypothesizing here that most of those people would never ever have any issues because they have never seen the actual real world impacts because they haven't been there. So, I mean, is that a good thing or a bad thing that they're less likely to be mentally impacted by it? I don't know. But it does then call into the question, I suggest, like, how trustworthy can they be when it comes to executing the job? Pardon the phrase, executing the job. When it comes to engaging targets morally and ethically correctly and following the ROE.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think, like we said before, that was a big part of it in terms of that patterns of life, like what has happened. Like, there's always a kind of saying of, jet pilots are above the battlefield, but helicopter pilots are in it. And I did think that, as a helicopter pilot, you're not feet on the ground, but you feel like you're in it. You're not kind of super high out of touch, in terms of no one's going to get you. Whereas they very much did try and get us on a regular basis. And it does give you, as you said, it's not the same as being in amongst it in the green zone, but you very much get that pattern of life, that urgency from guys. That we had some guys who were, I don't know where they were. And again, we got a shout, launch immediately, troops in contact. And as soon as we came onto the JTAC on the ground, he was like, you could just tell the pitch of his voice. He's like, where are you? We're like, oh, we're, inbound 5 minutes, blah, blah, blah. And he's like, right, okay. He's like, right, look for red. And normally it's a big talk on. The talk on can take, it can take a long time, like to try and get you onto exactly the right target. And that was always the hardest thing, because I remember someone saying it, said, right, imagine you're coming into land, you've come on back from holiday, going into Heathrow. He said, look out the window, and then imagine someone on a radio trying to tell you which house you need to look at. And then you've got to find that house, and then you've got to use a PlayStation controller to get a camera onto the same house that you're looking at out the window and be 100% sure that is the right house. It was hard. It was really hard. And, you'd have these like spot maps that had literally every single building on it and a number. But again, trying to get this massive map in this small cockpit, it was stressful. And again, these guys they're like, we need support now. We need it like on target. And you could tell as soon as this guy came on, but like, he's like, right, look for red smoke. And kind of like, yeah, oh yeah, visual red smoke. And he's like, right, come east, like 100 meters. He's like, yeah, it's like, see the tree line? Yeah, right, that's your target, clear to engage. It's like 100 meters, mate. That's like, that's danger close. He's like, yeah, Roger. And he's like, they were like all over them. And yeah, that kind of like massive ramp up, and just knowing that he's like, yeah. And we were like, you 100% sure about this? And he's like, yeah, 100% sure. And we were like, we did as many checks as we could. And then, yeah, I put a couple of 100 rounds of 30mm up and down the tree line with this trench where the Taliban guys were. And then, and again, hearing that relief, and he's like, fucking hell, we were in it. We were like, they were, he was like, they were coming over the walls kind of thing. And yeah, could you do that from a drone? Yes. And you'd be able to kind of have that higher up perspective, which can be helpful. But I feel like when you're there, I had that 100% confidence at the time that I'm like, he needs these rounds on target. We can see where they are. I'm confident to do this rapidly because that's a lot quicker than we would normally do it. But being kind of in the battlefield, you kind of go, yeah, I'm confident. Again, I'm sure a drone operator could do that, but if something was missed or lost in the wrong grid number or whatever it is, it's like there's that lot more potential to mess it up.
Yeah. What was it like leaving a job like that to go? I'm assuming you went straight into Civvy Street, right? You didn't move.
Yeah.
What was that like? Because that must have been a difficult adjustment, I'm guessing.
Yeah, I think it was. And I think it's certainly a job like that. It's a big part of your personality or how you see yourself or how you want the world to see you. Because I've got a mate of mine I went to school with, Ollie Phillips, who's a ex-England Sevens captain. And he had a really good career. Obviously,
he was military as well.
No, but it in terms of that was part of who he was.
Sorry. Yeah.
So then he got injured before he thought he would. He thought he had a couple more years in him kind of playing. And I remember reading it. It really resonated with me. He wrote this thing about it and saying, I was always Ollie Phillips, the rugby player. That's me. That's who I am, like England Sevens player. And all of a sudden he wasn't. And he's like, well, who am I? Like, what is my identity? And it was a big bit for me. And since I was at school, I'd always wanted to be an Apache pilot. That was all I wanted to be. And then, of course, worked hard, did it, and like achieved that thing. And then, that's always so it's the first thing you tell everyone about. But like, hi, I mean, not probably. Hopefully, it wasn't that much stinking chat, but it was a big part of who I was and my identity. And then all of a sudden, you haven't got that. You're just Tom. You're just a civilian, and that was quite difficult. I think. Just in terms of how you saw yourself or how you thought the world would see you and thinking, am I enough? Am I good enough? Just being, you don't want to go around being that guy, being like, I used to do this. And I was really conscious I didn't want to be that person. Because again, it's good to be proud of what you did and what you achieved, but I feel like you've got to move on. And, I think I missed all the guys. I missed that camaraderie. I know it's a real cliche, but it's a massive part of your life, living with these guys and spending all your time with them and having these bonds that you're probably never going to get as close with anyone outside of that. Like, I
agree. I think it's like, you're leaving the tribe.
Yeah.
You're literally leaving everything that enables your life, enables your existence, enables your satisfaction, enables your dissatisfaction, your highs, your lows. Everything about it, all the support, everything with the military, regardless of the service you're in. The tribe is there for you. They will support you through everything. They will give you all of the hopes and dreams you can aspire to be until you leave.
Yeah.
And then when you leave the tribe can't come with you.
Yeah.
And everyone in the tribe, they're all within the tribe. And all that matters to them is the tribe.
Yeah.
And how many people have and I've known that left when I was serving, and I think, yeah, I'll stay in touch with them. And I say, stay in touch. And I think I'm going to stay in touch. He was a mega guy. He's a mega. I'm going to stay in touch with him. None of them. You don't stay in touch with any of them, because as soon as they're out the bubble, they are, I don't want to say irrelevant, but they are. They're irrelevant because they are not the tribe. They're nothing to do with what you're doing, eating, living, breathing on a daily basis.
Yeah.
And then when you leave, certainly for myself, and you realize, holy shit, okay, this does not feel great. And you start getting back in touch with those people.
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing. I've tried really hard to stay in touch with as many people as I can, and still, but it is different. Like, and someone always said to me, he said, when you leave, it's like it's throwing a stone into a pond. There'll be a few ripples, and then it's like you were never there. Like, and it is, you go back, and I've been back to my old squadron, and it's comedy because some guy was, air trooper is now WO blah, and you're like, shit, like these guys are now running this. But most of the guys have no idea who you are. You're just some dude who used to work here. Like, they're not like, oh my God, it's you. Like, no one cares. And that's not a bad thing. It's like, these are all, I'd be exactly the same when I was there. If I was sat at some dinner,
it's a dose of reality.
Yeah.
It's a dose of reality.
And it's like, you did your bit, but again, they haven't got a statue of you outside the front. It's just like, you might have your name on a wall somewhere or some dusty picture in the mess. Like, oh yeah, that's me. Like, but it's not like, oh yeah, it's really So that is hard when you walk away from that. And it's all I'd ever known. I went straight to my first proper job and, did it for like 12 years. So then going from that to just this civilian world where it's very different. And yeah, it takes a bit of adjustment. It did take a bit of adjustment. Yeah, that takes a while finding your feet.
But then a lot of people don't adjust right. And they're the ones who everything about them is either who they serve with, regardless of how long ago that was, or what illness or ailment they've got because of that service.
Yeah.
It's a real problem. It's a real problem. But I feel like those people can't move on. I'm talking about mental ill health.
Yeah.
And I feel like those people, they are literally inhibiting themselves from moving on. I think the reality is when you feel that discomfort, it's not a comfortable feeling when you realize, actually, I don't really matter here. I don't really matter here where I was. I'm irrelevant to that now. I think it's important when you have that uncomfortable feeling is that you need to realign what you think makes you tick, re-understand what you think makes you tick and recalibrate, and try and sit down and work out what actually matters to me. Does it matter to me that people know I served in the military? Does it matter to me that the unit remembers me, or does it need to be something else that matters to me and make me tick? Because it doesn't need to be those things.
Yeah.
Who gives a shit? What unit you serve with. Yeah, it's an integral part of who you are now, and that's important. That's important. But I think for me, it's hard work. I'm really proud of my background. It's hard work to go. That isn't a significant part of you anymore. I try and make it about what do people think of me now based on what they know about me, assuming they know nothing about my past.
Yeah.
Did I think I'm a decent guy? Or do I think I'm a knob? Am I acting in a way that I would want to be associated with myself, or that would make the people around me, proud, or at least accepting of who I am, and that's about it.
Yeah, and it's really interesting. I found there was stuff, I think, in the military, everything's very like, this is how it is. This is how the world is. You can't be Jack. That's the worst thing you can ever do. You don't be late. Things that in the military, it's like, that is how it is. And then you leave and you're like, oh, that's maybe not how it is in the world. Like there's certain things and like, yeah, if certain businesses or whatever, it's actively encouraged to try and see off your colleagues to get, to make more money, to do whatever that is. And I think some people really struggle with that, to be like, but what, that's Jack. You can't, and it's like, well, it's just how it is. It's not the same. And like you say, I think for me is that I'm proud of what I did, but it doesn't define who I am. I don't want it to be that guy that's all I talk about. That's all I hark back to. I want to try and live in the present as much as I can, in terms of, like you say, like, do I think I'm, good bloke? Do people like to have a beer with me or like hang out, whatever? And I'm not just banging on about who I used to be or what I used to do. But it's hard. It's hard moving on, I think. As you say, it's easy to kind of, when you're in it, that's all that matters. That's all there is. And then as soon as you leave, it's not that you never cared, no one ever cared. Your mates still care, but the unit, the army, or whatever, they're like, it keeps on rolling. It's like, it's gonna keep going without you. Like it's just one of those things. And I think if you can get around that in your head, then it's all good. It's nice to be proud, like you say, of what you did and who you serve with, but it shouldn't really define who you are and everything about you.
Yeah, got to find a way to move on. I do think a critical piece of it, though, is, or for me, I think certainly helped me through in hindsight, is linking up with those people who are out and have been out for a while. Because it's sort of then, I think for me, it was that, okay, that's my link back to that tribe thing I was part of. Okay, I'm with them. And it's also the advice of people who've been out and been doing it already.
Yeah.
To go, okay, this is the real world now, and how to get through it. But then that's on the assumption that those people who you can maintain or reestablish contact with or maintain contact with after you leave are decent people, or switched on people who actually know things. When in reality, there's very few of those, and most people are struggling through it in the early days or the early years, like you are. It took me a long time. It took me years to find my feet. Years to find my feet. I think that to be comfortable in my acceptance of me being full blown civ pop.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah,
I'm Civvy Hugh. I'm Mr. Kia.
Yeah. That's what I mean. Yeah, it's like it's that thing of being like, you're not. In my case, I'm like, yeah, you can't keep saying. Again, I've got mates who are still in, and I was like, mate, you haven't flown an Apache in fucking 10 years. I mean, he's still in the mob, but like, he's still like, and again, it's not a dig. It's just that he's, oh yeah, in my head, I'm still an Apache pilot, but I'm not really. I haven't flown one in years. And I thought that was interesting that in his head, he's still like, yeah, that's still defined what I am in the military. And like you say, I really try and stay in touch with the guys, and quite a few, it's about half and half still in and still not. And it's nice having that bridge between it, and also to kind of have that dose of reality when you're like, oh, it was all amazing, it was so much fun, and they're like, oh my god, I just had to, and you're like, yeah, shit, I do not miss doing that bullshit, like all the stuff that you think, I've totally forgotten about that, I've forgotten the gnaws of whatever, blah, nonsense that the military had them doing. And you're like, oh yeah, that was shite. Like I do remember that, and be like, oh, you've got this posting, I don't really want to go. Doesn't matter, that's where you're going. Off you go, 6 months unaccompanied, enjoy. Yeah. Like there's that element you just totally forget about. You're like, oh yeah, that was shit, like I forgot about that. So I quite like keeping in touch with that, to go, yeah, that bit was shite, I really didn't like that.
How did the band come about? Were you a musician before you joined?
Yeah, I mean, I've always played guitar, like one of these things that kind of come in and out of since I was like a teenager, but I never played live, never played for anyone, not even my family. Like it was just something I did, and like, yeah, it was the weird COVID lockdown.
Oh, COVID!
Shenanigans.
COVID got so much to be blamed for.
I know. Well, this is kind of a positive thing. So I'm like, this bit was good, and so. Yeah, the singer in our band, she used to live close to where I did, and kids the same age, and it was that bit where you could kind of be outside and socialize, and like the kids are just going fully feral in the streets or whatever. So, and you just really want to talk to anyone because you're stuck in your house. And we ended up chatting, and she was kind of like, oh, what are you doing? Just keep sane. And I was like, oh, I've always played guitar, and now I'm kind of getting back into it. She's like, oh, I used to sing in a band. She's like, we should start a band. And I kind of literally laughed in her face, because I didn't know her very well. And I was like, what are you talking about? And she's just like, no, why not? Why not start a band? I was like, at the time, I was like, I'm 39, I'm like a respected person, like, and I think immediately my head went to a kind of defensive place, because I feel like it's this weird thing with ex-military, that there are things that are acceptable to do, and there are things that you've got to have your piss taken out of you if you do them. So, if you're like, I'm going to do an Ironman, and everyone's like, yeah, mate, that's mega. Or like, oh, I'm going to start my own coffee brand or t-shirt brand. Like, everyone's like, that's awesome. But to go and do like something artistic, everyone's like, what the fuck are you doing? Like, this is, and in my head immediately went there and was like, everyone will take the piss. Everyone will think, what are you doing, you clown? And she kind of like, she wouldn't leave it. So she kind of went, well, she's like, right, imagine you're sat in a care home and you're like 85. Are you going to think back and go, she's like, have you ever been in the shower and thought, I wish I'd stand on stage, like shredding on guitar, everyone's screaming your name? And she's like, I'm not promising that, but, and I was like, yeah, of course I have. Like, I always think that'd be amazing. And she's like, but you've never done it. I was like, no. And she's like, right, you're 85 in this care home, and you're going to look back and go, I'm really glad I didn't even give it a shot. I'm glad I never did that. And then I was like, phew. And she's like,
she is a master manipulator.
I think, yeah, she is. Dark. And then she was like, but she's like, yeah, eyes awake, you're back in the room. She's like, but you're not, you're 39. Like, you can do this. Like, you could do this. We can go. And I was like, you're gone then. Like, and I was like, I couldn't really think of a good reason not to. So we started pretty small, like just doing stuff like acoustic, me on guitar and her singing. And then she's like, no, I want to be in like a proper band, like write our own music, do all this stuff. And again, I was like, I don't know how to do it. She's like, yeah, just do it. Just write it and see what happens. And I saw him doing the first live performance he did. And I've been in some pretty hairy situations, and it's up there was as terrified as I've ever felt.
Really?
Which is mental. Like, I'd like to think of myself, I'm quite a confident guy. I'm happy speaking in front of people. And I genuinely was like, I'm not sure I can play. Like, I can't move my fingers. Like,
oh my God.
Just this, and it was like a really nice crowd as well. It wasn't like some shithole where everyone's like hoy and beery, whatever. It was quite chill. And I was like, I'm not sure I can do this. She's like, no, you've got this, you can do it. And it was okay. It wasn't amazing, but it was fine. And it's kind of grown legs from there, really. So yeah, hard plug coming up. So we're called Rogue Awakening. So we're like, do you remember Evanescence from the 90s? Like, yeah.
I remember Evanescence.
It's kind of that sound.
Evanescence. Yeah. I've listened to the stuff.
Yeah, do you like it?
Yeah, I've listened.
Under pressure?
No, I do like this stuff. It's at the upper end of kind of the weight, how heavy, what I would listen to. Any heavier, and I would like, negative, negative, not happening. It's there. It's like, it's at the limit.
Yeah, so it's technically metal. We've seen people with metal, it's the growls, kind of noise, growls, but it's not. So we have Killenby, our lead singer, who's got this amazing voice. So yeah, it's kind of heavy guitars, heavy drums, but clean, epic vocals over the top. And it just kind of started as a bit of fun, and now it's all got quite serious. We've got like a bunch of songs out on Spotify. Go and check it out. And yeah, we just had a new single just came out, Remain Untamed, did like a whole music video and everything, which was awesome. And yeah, I love it. I absolutely love like getting on stage and performing.
How often are you gigging? And where? Like what areas?
I'm mostly in the south, so we're kind of so at the moment. The next few gigs are kind of like Portsmouth, Worthing, I think Eastbourne, Brighton, Southampton, like kind of around there. We're doing Guildfest Festival. It's in Guildford, and we try and limit it because we're lucky enough now that we're getting offered quite a lot of good gigs. But again, we've all got lives, we've got other stuff going on. So it can become too much, and then it becomes not fun, if that makes sense. If you're like driving, like we did a gig the other day in Margate, which was quite surreal, but really good. I know I got like flashbacks. Is the Only Fools and Horses episode where they do like the trip to and it's still quite like that, but then it's kind of hipster and cool now. There's all these like trendy
weird places in Margate.
It's mad, but
I've only been there once.
Yeah, but it was a great gig. It was really good, but it's like 2.5 hours. And then driving back at like stupid o'clock in the morning, and you're like, I don't want to be doing this all the time. So yeah, I'd say about once, maybe twice a month. But yeah, it's all up on our socials, Rogue Awakening Official.
So you, on most of the gigs, are you gigging with anyone else, or any other bands doing it with you?
Usually be a couple of bands on the lineup. It varies. It might be 2, might be 3, sometimes more. Like obviously festivals is a totally different thing, but it's just such a nice thing to have this creative outlet. And I think again, like X-Mill, it doesn't necessarily go hand in hand with creativity. But then I thought about it, and I was like, there were loads of guys that we all knew who'd be like, pull out a guitar or bar with a piano and would be amazing and can do this stuff. And I feel like people can be a bit judgy. But then I was also like, I'm a 40-year-old guy. Like, I don't need to worry if people are going to take the piss, which I'm sure they do, but I don't actually care. Like this gives me a lot of joy. It's just such an amazing feeling being on a stage and having people listen to music.
It's a pretty cool thing to be doing. I'm gonna go out on a limb and say most blokes at one point or another fantasize about being in a band in some way, shape, or form, or they've watched a band.
Yeah,
you know what I mean, and gone, oh my god, that is cool.
Yeah.
Everyone's into music. Everyone's into live. Everyone enjoys live performances of the bands they love, and there must have blokes go, oh my god, that's so cool. Women as well go, oh my god, that's so cool. I'd love to do that.
Yeah,
I'd love to do that. Yeah. There's a big thing that we said. There's a big thing that we said about getting the art. So for I'm not suggesting why you go into it, but for like recovery from things, especially from mental ill health, and also from finding a sense of purpose.
Yeah,
and freedom of expression and understanding yourself, and understanding your emotions and sort of processing things that you've done in the past. It's a big thing that we said about the arts. There's an organization, I can't remember the name of it. I think it's Birmingham based, and they're a charity. I wish I could remember the name. And they're all about getting ex-military into the arts because it's been shown to be, I say the arts, creative. Creative from painting to music to acting, whatever. Because it just has such a success rate with people who have been ill. There's a guy I recently interviewed, and he was one of the bootnecks who's in Sunray. You know, have you seen that?
Yes.
Have you watched the film?
Yes. Yeah. It's really good. Yeah. Because I've had some like contact with him like over the socials and stuff. So I've never met him in person, but again, it's that thing of like, I think people underestimate how much of this stuff you learn in the military, like putting on a show. And I always said that because, guy I'm really good friends with, and he was my colour sergeant at Sandhurst, and he was in the same company, and I was like, mate, you are such a bastard. Like, and he was like, mate, it's pantomime. Like, that's not me when I'm being, at Royal Military Academy Sandhurst, DS. Of course, you're the bad guy. Of course, you're the guy shouting you because you've got a mark on your bear or whatever it is. He's like, that's not me. Like, and yeah, I think certainly with like performing. I mean, I've gone fully down this road. So when we go up, we have like war paint on. I have like a whole alter ego that I do on stage, who's like a totally different voice, like this kind of barbarian character, and it's awesome because you just and people love it. Because when we first started doing it, and I was like, are people just going to be like, what the fuck is he doing? Like, but people buy into it because I think it's like anything in life. If you stand up in front of a platoon and you're kind of like, oh yeah, I don't know. But if you're like, right, listen in, gents, it's that everyone's like, okay, he knows or she knows what they're doing. Like, you just buy into it. You're like, okay, they got the confidence. Okay, what is it you want me to do? And it's exactly the same with like being on a stage or whatever and having that confidence to say, right, we're going to do this and you guys are going to listen and you're going to join and you're going to clap your hands and you're going to shout and you're going to all this. And people are like, okay, yeah. And it's that, then when you kind of fully commit to that and go, yeah. And I think it's really interesting what you're saying earlier on about the tribe. And I think there's a massive bit of that in music. Like, and that's been such a nice revelation. So we're kind of in the hard rock metal world. And it really is like a tribe of people. And
is it really? Because I was going to ask you about that about 5 minutes ago, because I've thought from the outside looking in, because of the nature of the music, that maybe there's quite a bit of animosity between the bands.
See, I'm not saying it never happens, but I'd say generally you realize, because again, I had that mindset when I first started doing it. And again, maybe it's just that how the media perceives it is that, it's us, our band versus all the other bands, and we need to come out on top. And it's like, maybe that's a military thing. And I think part of it's that kind of X factor. Everyone thinks that there's one recording contract and you've all got to fight it out to prove who's best. It's not how it is at all. And actually, all the opportunities we've got, I'd say mostly are from other bands helping each other out or whatever it is, because it is that, a rising tide raises all ships. And it's so true with music because it's brutal. Like, and we're not pushing to be full-time, musicians because there's no money in it. But we're quite passionate about what we do and we take it very seriously. But there are other bands that we played with who are like pretty close to making it big. Like they're, playing big festivals, playing this. And it's all about that support network of guys, asking them for advice. Or if you can't do a gig, you're like, oh, we can't do this, but have you checked out our mates? Because they're amazing. And they're like, and anything you can do, like the kit or whatever, and be like, we can't get this bit of kit to work. Can we use yours? Or how did you do it? And yeah, there's your band who are a bit standoffish, but generally people are like super friendly because you're all in the same boat. You're all in an industry that's notoriously hard to get anywhere in, to get any progress. And even like the fans, like people who come to gigs, like and everyone always see, you see people in the metal world with like, and I'm very unmetal. I haven't got long hair, I haven't got beard, got a few tattoos, but they're the nicest people you'll ever meet. Like really friendly, come, and people spending money buying our merch and stuff. Like no one's forced them to do that, but they know it's a big part of a band is selling merch, selling t-shirts. So you can pay to record, you can pay to do music videos, all that kind of stuff. So I've always felt it's such a nice world and community. Like yeah, you're gonna get knobheads and like anything you do in life, but generally everyone is like super supportive, and even on social media, like bigging up each other's single releases or whatever, like going, oh, go and check out our friends. So yeah, it's funny that a lot of people do perceive it as like all the bands hate each other and they're all like, yeah, fuck, with all these feuds or whatever going on. Now I'm sure that does happen, and there are big at the top level, I've no doubt there are bigger kind of people pissing each other off, but especially the kind of grassroots where we are, it's like we're all in it together. We're all trying to just help each other out and get somewhere. So it's really nice. And even if you take it down to a smaller level, being in the band, and I feel like that was something I hadn't realized I missed from the military, is when you've got a role and people are depending on it. You can't be checking on your mucker to be like, oh, you're doing these checks, you're doing that. You've just got to trust that they're going to do it. They're going to be a professional. And if they don't, it can end up really bad for everyone. So actually being on stage, being in a band, you've got to, shit will go wrong. Like guitars will cut out, drum roll loses sticks, or whatever can happen will happen. And to know you can rely on the people around you to keep going, to keep like look after you if you lose your place or whatever it is, or you stack it or whatever, all of which I've done. It's great. It's that real feeling of like, I'm an important part of this. I'm like a key member of this. And I'm going to look after them and they're going to look after me. And that's really nice. It's a really nice thing to be a part of, I think.
Yeah. That collaborative attitude is really refreshing to hear between the bands, because I think that is something that far too often, I think the military community, people in the military community, especially amongst entrepreneurs, really get wrong. They don't recognize that collaborative attitude between even what would be on paper be competitors, competitive companies, for example, competitive businesses. That collaborative attitude can be basically a force multiplier.
Yeah, massively
for them.
Massively.
And I remember I'm really lucky in that business aspect, entrepreneur aspect. That when I did a couple of training courses with a company called Argus Europe years ago, when I was getting into the security industry, and the security industry is horrendous. It's a horrific industry. For employees, for contractors, but also for business owners. It's cutthroat. No one trusts anyone. Everyone shits on everyone. It's real bad. But Argus is run by a ex-Trooper guy and was set up by an ex-Det guy, ex-49 guy, Bri Tuff, and Nick McCarthy. And Nick ran the business with that aspect in mind, that attitude in mind, that if he couldn't help a customer, maybe he didn't have the resources to deliver whatever service he wanted to deliver, whether it was training or whether it was like a surveillance job, right? As opposed to saying, so I can't do it. It'd be, I can't do that. But try these guys. And he would refer them on to another company. Yeah. Or if they were asking after an operator, a CPO or a surveillance operator, if he didn't have someone, he'd go, I haven't. But again, try these other guys. And he would just name companies he knew were reliable. Didn't have a business interest with them. Didn't have a business partnership with them. He wasn't going to get a cut from any business he had with them. But meaning by being a positive influence to the customer, still being positive and helpful and referring them on, it gives the industry it gives the customer a better experience, gives them a better experience of the industry, and ultimately it makes the industry more trustworthy and a better reputation. And I thought that's fucking awesome. And it wouldn't get reciprocated often, and not very often in the security industry anyway. And I thought that's actually the complete opposite of what you would think. And then the second time I experienced it was with randomly a jeweler. And I was in the street, and there was a jeweler on the street, and was the only jeweler on the street. Or maybe there was another second one on the street. I was chatting to him, and it was for a bespoke job for a company. And across the road, there was another jeweler's opening. And I said to this jeweler, oh, man, it must be a nightmare, mate, having that jeweler open across there. And he said, nah, not a problem. I said, we've only got two. He said, yeah, but not a problem, because the third one opening, this street is already a good street to come to for jewelry. This street becomes more of a focus for people who want to get jewelry, go to that street. So that competitor opening up across the road results in a net increase of people coming to that street to buy jewelry.
Yeah.
It's like the attitude it's an awesome attitude to have, because it stops you shitting on other people, makes you a positive influence in the community, as in the business community. It's much better having that. Yeah. It's much better having that outlook as well, just existing.
No, it does. And, you feel much better having that, like you say, because it is the amount of stuff that we've got when we've kind of, someone asked us, can you come to this gig? And I'm like, yeah, sure. And then I was like, out of interest, how did you hear about us? Was it this? And they were like, and you think, maybe it's the socials, maybe it's Instagram or whatever. But a lot of the time it's just, another band said, you guys were awesome. And I think it comes back to that, number one rule in life, don't be a dick. And it's such a massive thing of just, turn up, be polite, be nice, don't be a dick. And most bands do abide by that, and they're very, helpful. They'll always try and do whatever they can to help the other bands around them. And people remember that. If you're the guys who turn up and you're difficult or you're prima donnas or whatever it is, people don't want to work with you. People are like, no, those guys are like douchebags.
Yeah, save that for when you're massive.
Yeah, and then you can do that. You can be like, I'm not dealing with any of this shit.
Yeah.
I know, it's like, but it's really funny actually, because I had a gig a while back. Two of my old bosses turned up to watch. And it was a really good gig. Everyone had a good time down in Hobbit in Southampton, which is like really good kind of rock metal pub.
What's it called?
The Hobbit.
The Hobbit.
Yeah, it's awesome. It's like literally they've built a whole castle out in the beer garden. It's massive, and they've got like big mural of dragon and all this stuff. It's mega. It's a proper good pub. They do really good like these mad cocktails in like pints. Don't have too many of them because it gets a bit loose. Yeah, and
2 bosses turned up.
Yeah, and and afterwards, same old boss, he turns to Kimberly, I was singing, he's like, it was really good. He goes, right, what's the objective with all this? And she just like laughed at him, and she's just like, you guys are all the same. And I was just like laughing at him as well, because I can see it, but he's like, what's the objective? And she's like, well, there's no objective. It's not like, right, we must seize this area, must do this, these are the submission criteria. But I said, but that is kind of a big part of who you are when you're in the military. And actually, we have our goals, we have things we'd like to do, but they're not ultimately the objective, because you can't, for example, we'd love to play like Bloodstock and Download, which are 2 big metal heavy rock festivals. But there's no like, you do X, Y, and Z and you get to play them. Like there's no direct route. There are ways you can do that, but there's no like, do this, this, and this, and that is where you'll get to. So it's more kind of like, well, let's concentrate on making awesome music. Let's concentrate on putting on really good live shows. Like, let's engage with our fans. Let's get people caring about us and wanting to be part of what we're doing. And that might then happen. It might not, but that's not a failure. We're not failed. Like, we'd love to do it. And it's good to have that kind of thing in back of your mind going, I'd love to do that. That'd be really cool. But then we got lots of bands that we know who've done that. And it's not like you suddenly go, right, that's it. Pack up, guys. We've done it. We've played that festival. It's like, no, you obviously keep going. You're still, and it can be really humbling. Like, we've played like some decent sized festivals, and then you play a pub to like 4 people and just be like, it's quite humbling having that bringing you back down to earth. And I think, so you've got to kind of address the reasons you're doing it, and I think, as ex-mil, we're all like, yeah, let's do an Ironman. You do all the training and then you do it. And then, you're all these guys are like, going to do another Ironman. Like, because, you've had that work up and that takes over your life, and then you need another goal. So actually having something that's less kind of direct, this is the thing, I've achieved it, I've done it. It's like, well, actually, no, we're just trying to make really good music, trying to put on good shows, trying to entertain people. Like, it's harder to quantify that. And that's been quite fun. Changing your mindset with that, I think.
Yeah, I know exactly what you mean. Right, we conscious of your time, so we've got a bunch of questions submitted in here from the platinum subscribers, which we're going to circle around to now, if that's okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
So let's have a look in no particular order, right? And these, and they're not all on the same topic. These are random out of the blue, so I apologize in advance. Okay. If you were from a lower class background, would it have made it harder to join up in Sandhurst for Sandhurst?
You're saying I'm posh? No. It's hard to say. So,
well, you didn't say you're not middle class, were you?
Well, I don't know. I'd probably put myself as middle class. Okay. Like, I don't know. Would you say I'm upper class?
Not basing that on now. I'm basing it on what you were talking about. I think in the icebreaker you mentioned about your parents, be it for your parents' background.
Yeah. So my parents are working class. Yeah. I'm definitely firm middle class. Went to private school when it was cheaper to do that kind of stuff. But yeah, I mean, certainly when I was at Sandhurst, you can't lie and say, oh no, there's none of that. It's like, yeah, you want to go guards, you want to go household cav. It's a certain type of person who ends up going there. Now, that's not true of all of them, but generally speaking, I'd say if you're an officer, there's a certain type that they like, and they usually, went to very expensive schools, own half of Scotland, but taught with a posh English accent kind of thing. But I would honestly say certainly the majority of Sandhurst, there's a big mix of backgrounds, like that you get the poshest people you've ever met, and you'll get people who are definitely not posh. And you get a lot of ex-Toms as well coming through, obviously been picked out, and they're like, you're going to go off to training. So you do get that real, and actually definitely 20 years before I did it, there was very much, if you spoke in a certain way, then you're not the type to be an officer. Whereas now they're like actively like, no, you want that. variation of backgrounds. Because if you only recruit the same kind of person, you're going to get the same result, the same kind of attitudes, the same ways of thinking, actually. And if you can get someone who comes from a totally different background and goes, well, I've seen something like this wherever they came from, whatever they did before, and they're going to look at it in a totally different way. So I think now there's definitely much more. It's hard to say because I am middle class. So can I say with total authority that's the case? But I think now, they genuinely are looking. It's like, have you got the ability to do this job? Whatever qualities they're looking for in a British Army officer, if they can see that, I don't think they really care about where you come from. And I think that is much more the case these days.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay. What do you think of Prince Harry disclosing how many kills he got in Afghan? Was he a good pilot?
I was waiting
Throw him under the bus. Throw him under the bus.
Throw him under the bus. It's difficult with Harry because, he's obviously been under the cosh in the media, and media has a certain view of him. Understatement, somewhat. I never direct. He was around. He was in our sister squadron, so I met him, socialised with him, but I'm not his mucker. I'm not his best mate. And I think a lot of people say, "Oh, yeah, he's not a pilot." He 100% did do the course and he did pass it, etc. So he was out there doing the job. Now, when he was out there, normally as a front seat operator, so you're commanding the aircraft, you're doing the weapons, you'll have a less experienced, newer person as your backseat pilot. Not always the case, but generally. Again, were they going to give him a new guy? No, they gave him one of our best. Yeah, I probably shouldn't say because you'll know who he is, but one of our best operators, massively experienced. But of course they did, because, you're going to look after someone of that status. So, he 100%, he went out there and he did a job. So I think you got to give him credit for that, really, that he went out there and did it for real. He wasn't just kind of sat, because people are like, oh no, was he just sat in Bastion all the time? I was like, no, he went out, operated, engaged, fired on Taliban, etc. He went and did it. I don't know massive details of what he did, but I think people are always ready to give him a lot of stick, whether you agree with that or not. There's always going to be that media spin on it, but I think ultimately he's gone out and done the same job as I done. So that's kind of what my viewpoint is. It really, that he's gone and done the job. So you got to give him a bit of credence for that, really.
What's the culture of Sandhurst? In the BBC documentary Sandhurst 2011, officer cadets went beagling. I experienced I remember going to Sandhurst for a week, look at life, and they were looking at sending me down there as an instructor, and that was one of the things that got shown that they do was beagling. I thought, my God, this is a different world. Okay, so they went beagling, and they portrayed a trainee getting into the household cavalry due to his upper class background, not due to good performance. Can't see these things happening in a depot. What was the culture there? I know you just touched on this briefly, but what was the culture like there generally with the officers?
I think there's a big left and right of arc at Sandhurst. As you say, there is beagling. I do remember, I didn't even know what it was. I was like, what, you just chase a bunch of dogs around? Literally, that is...
I didn't even know it was that. I had to ask.
I know, so did I, because I was like, it's not something you've ever had. I was like, I've never experienced this in my life. Although I think arguably some of the guys did it because they were like, it's a bit of a schlob, you can just go and chill out, really. It wasn't the most athletic. Because that, sports afternoons, whereas I did boxing and rugby. So there's the kind of core stuff. Again, I did touch on it before, and I think, you're lying if you think if your father was, general in blah regiment, you're going to be hard pushed to be mugged off. But in that same breath, when you do selection, not that selection, for the different corps or regiments. So you put down 3 initially, I think, and then you won't take it down to 2, and you do visits. So you basically go hang out. They get you in the bar. And that's how they kind of make an assessment on you, and that they're watching you all the time. And you don't realize till afterwards that you're being watched, how you act. And ultimately it's do I want to live with this person in the mess? Are they going to fit in? Now you could say it's harsh because some people you think, well, actually they're not. But then I think actually there are cases of people who went into, household cav or the guards who are not your traditional guards officer necessarily, but people are like, he's a good lad. People get on with them. And I do genuinely think if you fit and they think you're the kind of person we want to be with, in our unit, then they will actively make that happen. But there are definitely people who, because they went to X school or their dad was colonel of blah, they're going to get a head start. I mean, that's life. Like, I think, it's naive to think they'll be like, absolutely not, we're not, taking you. So there's elements of that at but Sanus was brutal, and I know everyone like takes a piss, but it's like a year's training course, and it doesn't matter if you're going to go in whatever role you're going to do, you're still digging trenches, you're still doing these tough exercises, and it's a long time to be doing it, and like be making your beds in a certain way and do this and that. So people obviously like to take the piss and say, oh, it's all just posh people doing nonsense, and there is some posh nonsense, to get me wrong, but there's other bits that you're like, it's not all kind of which knife and fork to use and all that good stuff.
Okay, next question from the subscribers: would you rather be taken hostage by the Taliban or by Iraqi insurgents? I told you, no particular order.
That is good. That's pretty. I mean, neither's great. I'm not going to lie. I mean, we had this conversation as well, because, as I said, touched on earlier, that there was allegedly $1 million bounty for Apache Pilot if someone shot down an Apache and could bring you to them, they'd cough up $1 million. And there were various rumors of what they would do to you, most of which involve like cutting off your skin and like cutting off your balls and all that good stuff. Standard stuff.
Standard menu.
Standard operating procedure in these situations. So and we had this big debate about what you would do, because there was no real answer. If we got shot down and we're like, well, what do you? Because initially you go out as a fighting pair, so you'd have your wingman, and they were like, basically the wingman's just is going to be very tight in on you. Whether they come and get you, maybe not, but they're definitely going to be overhead, like making sure anyone's trying to get to the crash site, they're going to be dealing with them. But then as it went on, we're like, well, actually, you're tying up half of your force. So, and risk, did we ever get one shot down? No. We lost a couple for other reasons, but active enemy action, no. I mean, they got hit, but they're very survivable, the tough aircraft. So then it was like, well, okay, now we're going to go and operate single aircraft. So if you had an issue, you were on your own for a reasonable amount of time. So then it was a kind of, well, do we stay with the wreck, because then they can find you, but then everyone else can find you? Mm-hmm. Or do you try and, push out to a position or better defendable? Or there was all these things talked about. And then the last one was, because you had the stubby SA-80 behind you, and you had your, was initially Browning, then Glock. Was it Glock? No, SIG. Yeah. With the John Woo massive magazine, just because it looked cool. And it was all very much like, well, what? And some of us, myself included, was like, well, I'll fight as long as I can, but I'm not going to let them capture me, because I don't want to go out like that. So it was a kind of, the SA-8s for them and the SIGs for you. And it got really heated. People got really passionate about like, no, because there's always a chance, and there was this, and I was like, no, I'm not. I don't want to be skinned alive. Like, and who knows? On the day, who knows what could happen? So, going back to the question, I think, I'd probably go with the Iraqis, just on what the Taliban had promised to do to us. I'm not saying the Iraqis would have been a soft touch. I don't think they would have, but I think either way, it's pretty grim.
It is a tough call, that.
Yeah. I think I'd probably still say, Iraqi insurgents, I think maybe.
Iraqis, I think so. And I think because they are less, the Taliban are almost all like Islamic fundamentalists. The Iraqis are not.
Yeah.
And the Iraqis are more interested in what they can get for you, as opposed to fucking
mess
you up.
Yeah. And they would properly, And I was like, I think it's one of those things. Well, I even got to the point where people talk about having grenades in the cockpit. And I was like, we are not carrying grenades in the cockpit. But once people were like, no, we're going to carry. And I was like, no, absolutely not. Because you know what's going to happen. But it was genuinely talked about. People were like, no, I'm going to take a grenade with me. I was like, no, let's not be doing that. But sorry.
Sorry, no, sorry. How does the Army Air Corps compare to the RAF and Navy counterparts? And is there much cross training?
There's a lot, to be honest. So when you do your pilot's course, so you kind of do the selection stuff, most of which is kind of medical things, and you do a little bit of flying just to assess if you're suitable. And then the majority of it is all cross tri-service now. So you do, it's changed a little bit now, but you used to do like fixed wings, so like little single propeller planes buzzing around near Cranwell. So you do that with the Navy, but obviously the RAF are literally just across the road. And then you went to Shawbury for your rotary, so basic and advanced helicopter. And again, it's all tri-service. So it's really nice because, I mean, it was that thing you kind of go on the piss with all these guys and do all your training together and you get close mates. And then all of a sudden, a few years later, you're all in Afghan. You're like, all right, mate, like, what are you doing here? Like, so, and that was invaluable, really, because, I mean, obviously, you're going to do your job as best you can. But the fact you know these guys and you're like, I know them from way back. And you're like, yeah, it just builds that trust much quicker because, you know, you've done all your training together. And I think ultimately, in terms of, you know, everyone argue till the cows come in about who's better, who's this or that. It's a very similar product because you've all gone through the same training. Like, yeah, when you come out specializing, it's going to be slightly different, but it's all written by the same manuals. It's all kind of same thing. So, and actually, a lot of guys do end up swapping services for whatever personal various reasons, like leave the RAF, go to the army, or more usually going from the army to the RAF or whatever, to stay flying often. So yeah, it's much of a muchness, and you very much. I mean, again, it wouldn't shock me if in the future it all just becomes Joint Helicopter Force, and everyone doing it all together, because it saves money and all the rest of it. But yeah, you pretty much you see each other. I mean, there's always banter, there's always that good stuff of like ribbing about who's better and all that, but generally it's a very similar kind of product comes out at the end.
Okay. Could the air campaign in Afghan and Iraq have been much better? Should the civilian casualties have been much lower?
Ooh, it's very hard to say. I mean, like with a lot of things, there's a lot of histories, and I studied history at uni, and you look back at all this stuff and go, well, this is what we should have done. But, hindsight's a beautiful thing. I think we had very limited resources. Like, the number of aircraft we had, I think maybe 8 Apaches, like for all of Helmand province. That's not a lot. And, similar levels of Chinooks and Lynx and Merlin as well later on, as well as Sea Kings and all that. And, a lot of these aircraft are not designed for that. Like the Sea King really struggled just with power, as did the Merlin. And it's no fault of the guys. It's just, the Merlin's designed to fly around over the sea. Like, it's not designed to operate at those altitudes with all the dust and everything else. So yeah, you always feel like you could have done more. Could you as an individual have done more? I don't think so, really. I think, most of the guys were very diligent about how they did it. And we had a doctor come out, aviation specialist, on one of our tours and kind of did some talking to everyone. And he came out, and I only found this out after the event. And he said, like, all your crews are dangerously fatigued. He's like, you are really close to having a major incident, i.e. a crash, which subsequently did happen. We lost an Apache. Luckily, the guys were fine. And it's really hard to say, especially guys, ex-infantry, whatever, you're literally in being like, I'm really tired. I need to go to sleep. I need to get my rest. Everyone's like, oh, bloody aircrew, bloody pilots. But it is that element of like, but if I'm hanging and I make a mistake, I'm writing off a £40 million aircraft. Like, and that doesn't make it better or worse, but it is that, well, ultimately.
At minimum.
Yeah. Or you plow into, the middle of Bastion or whatever, or, fuel Bowser, or, there's a lot more in that way of like the kit you're dealing with. We've all been absolutely knackered. But if you're screwing up, flying a big expensive aircraft, they don't want to lose you, and they don't want to lose the aircraft because it takes a long time to train you and you're expensive. So yeah, I think given what we had and the people we had, like, I feel like the people were doing the very best they could, operating at the limits of what we could do, what we could achieve. Yeah, if we had more people, we had more stuff, yeah, of course it would have changed things, but ultimately we didn't. And that's very much a much higher level than we're operating at. That's a kind of, defense level, acquirement type stuff. So I think, from what I saw, my experience, everyone was working as hard as they could to try and have the most effect, to try and look after the guys and girls on the ground as much as they could. And I certainly didn't see anything that would counter that opinion, really.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
It's a good comedy one.
On average, how much smarter are pilots in the UK military compared to the UK infantry?
Compared to what?
Pilots compared to infantry. Military pilots compared to military infantry. How much smarter? I've got thick skin. Tom.
It's hard to say because also we've had guys,
Well, you can
ex-colleagues of
hypothesize.
yours who are Apache pilots, guys, para guys who I know very well, and one of whom is probably one of the better guys I've operated with. So yeah, I think it's very easy to say, yeah, good old kind of wooden tops and be like, they're all infantry or grunts, all that kind of thing. But like, you get some really smart guys and you get guys who are not so smart. I think it takes a certain type of mindset and a certain like ways you can, to fly an aircraft. There are guys who are really good at flying aircraft, but they can't do any of the other stuff in terms of like managing the battle space, managing the radios, all that other stuff. So there's like various skill sets within that.
You've been very giving a very
political
answer.
That is quite political.
I'd
say on average, yeah, you've got to be smarter than your Joe average infantryman. Like, and I'll probably get stick for that, but that's to say there are a lot of guys who are ex-infantry who go on to fly Apaches. So there's no element of like, oh yeah, you've got to be this. We are not geniuses. We're not Jedis.
There's a reason why everyone's not a goddamn pilot, mate, in Civvy Street. The fact of the matter is you should be able to have a chance of being selected to be a pilot. You need to be more highly educated than the average Joe, more highly educated, and you need to be more intelligent, I'd say. And
I don't even think the education. I think like there are guys who, again, you like 0 GCSEs, all that kind of stuff. Like, again, I won't mention his name because he might.
No, but on average, I mean.
Yeah, on average, I think you've probably come from a background maybe where you've had that, but there are lots of guys who, again, no GCSEs, barely any qualifications, but they've just got something about them. Their brain works in a certain way that they can take on information, they can retain that, they can move your arms and legs in operate different ways, and be able to do all this stuff. So I think, I don't think it's necessarily book smart type thing. Like a lot of guys are, and some people aren't. But I think, there needs to be a certain ability to do the actual aviation bit, to be able to take on all that information coming at you. And capacity is a big thing we talk about in flying. It's like, how much can you take on before you hit your limit capacity and you can't take anything on, you can't talk, you can't fly. So that's a big thing they try and do in the training, is load you up, as they say, try and give you more and more stuff. Like, make this radio call, turn right, where are you on the map? Right, give me a grid reference, blah, blah, blah. And to be able to do that and not get overloaded. So what they call being maxed out, where you just can't talk, you can't hear. It's like, so I think that ability to have a big capacity is key.
Yeah, maintain the handle on things under pressure.
Yeah, right? Exactly that.
And it's the same. You can make the same comparison as you move up the ranks from a Apache pilot to whatever the words for the commander is. Same in the infantry. The difference between a Tom and a sergeant major. He's big.
Yeah.
And part of that reason is because the sergeant majors in those positions have been tested to those levels. Literally when all the world is collapsing around you, you're getting thrown information and expected to process it and have the answers immediately and do everything else at the same time.
Well, I think that exactly that really. So there are guys who are just like, you could say, oh, well, that's all experience. It's like, no, but there's only certain people who get to being sergeant major because of part experience, but a lot of it's because of who they are. They're able to do that, whereas some people just can't. Some people, and it's not their fault.
It's not always trainable. It's just people's brains. So
I think that is a big part of it. Yeah, training helps, but a lot of it is, some people are good under pressure and some people aren't. They just can't take on that stuff. So I think that for me, that's the biggest part, is how do you deal with that? And it's not always the same kind. Like, I think in a nutshell, that's probably.
Final question. Is it a good or a bad thing as a pilot, you can be sure of how many people you've killed, unlike the infantry and other roles?
People have quite different opinions on this. So I personally, I didn't count. I didn't keep a tally or anything. And it's not as black and white as you may think. Like, you're watching on a big screen, but there are times when they're, receiving fire from, say, a building, and you'd put a November Hellfire, which is essentially a thermobaric weapon that would overpower, let's say, basically puts in gas, ignites the gas, blows out the walls.
Nasty bit of kit.
It is pretty nasty. Probably not supposed to call it thermobaric because they're like enhanced blast is what they called it.
Oh, they used to be called
Like,
thermobaric.
yeah, but
not allowed to use that term anymore.
Now they call it enhanced blast. Apparently that means, I mean, it's nasty and it drops.
Is that because the media got hold of the term? I assume.
I'm not sure, but we were told no, it's enhanced blast. Yeah, and yeah, you can see this fire coming from the building. You're like, do I know how many people in there? No, I don't. So there were some people who very fastidiously kept track of it for whatever reason. Like personally, that's not something that I liked, that I was comfortable with. And some people did. So I think it depends on the personality. Like obviously Prince Harry thing comes up and like everyone's, everyone has their own ways of dealing with it. I'm not saying what's right or wrong. Everyone has their way of saying, well, do I want to think about it that much? Do I want to disassociate with it? How do you manage that, strain and stress or the consequent PTSD that might result from that? So, yeah, I think it totally depends on the individual. Some people have a certain way of thinking about it, and other people are like, no, I know what I did, and I did it professionally and diligently on the day, and then they kind of just compartmentalize that and leave it. Whereas other people will make a note and might even describe in detail what happened and keep a kind of diary of it like that. So yeah, it varies massively, I think.
Yeah, I can imagine. It's been a pleasure, Tom.
Thanks very much for having me. Thank you.
It was a pleasure. I said to you at the end of the icebreaker, between the icebreaker and this, I'm going to enjoy this episode chatting. And I certainly have. It's been really good.
It's good. I'm glad I haven't gnawed you to death.
No, it's been great, mate. It's been great. How can people follow what the band's doing and follow what you're doing? Yeah,
so we're on all Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, YouTube. So Rogue Awakening official on most of them. There's also a health spa in California, which is not the one that's called the same name. I like to think they ripped us off. So yeah, we're on Spotify.
Why Rogue Awakening? Why is it called Rogue Awakening?
Oh, that's a whole nother story. But yeah, people think it's a Star Wars thing. It's like, Sing was like, it's like 2 Star Wars titles. I was like, no, it's not. And then she's like, no, it's Rogue One and The Force Awakens. It's like, shit. So people are like, is it a Star Wars thing? It's like, no, I think because we like the idea of being a rogue, like, a bit of a wrong but charming kind of bit. Someone who's, we all know people like that.
Why don't you just call it Wrong and Awakening?
We could call it Wrong and Awakening. Well, people can't spell rogue. They call it like Rouge and Rude Awakening. I was like, no, that's not it. And I think the Awakening
bit... It's a
good
name. It's a good Rogue Awakening.
Thank you. Yeah, and I think the Awakening bit was a kind of, again, it was out of COVID and people had... It totally upended their lives. People were like, this is how my life is and this is what I do and this is my routine. And certainly kind of probably more... Maybe it was my influence that I was like, actually, this was a whole part of my life that probably wouldn't have happened without COVID and was a good thing. That it kind of made me stop what you're doing on that kind of treadmill of, doing all the stuff you got to do and work and family and everything else. So yeah, it's a bit of a combination of those two, really. So there you go. Small history lesson. But yeah, we're kind of, and again, we gig in all over the South. If you ever come along to a gig, come and say hi. It's always great to chat to people. So yeah, check it out. See what people think. And the new video is amazing as well. Got a bit of blindfolded and pole dancing in there. I get whipped in it. So yeah, it's a lot to take on, a lot to see. There you go. Hey. Well, you can watch it. You'll be like, yeah, it's mega. It's good. It's good. Something for everyone. Yeah.
Been great, mate. Right, we need to go. Yeah, we're at the limit. Good luck with everything.
Thanks very much.
Anytime you're down these parts, let us know. Jump back in. We'll
definitely.
We'll do it again.
Come back. Yeah, it'll be good.
And I'll get across to one of the gigs.
Yeah. You got to come to a gig.
Yeah, we'll do.
Come down, get in the pit, shred it up. Yeah, sure. Be good.
Sweet. Right, we're done.
Mega.